Hi everyone, welcome to the show. Today it's me. I'm going to be talking to all of you. So let's talk about, the last few weeks I've been talking about leadership, what are the various aspects of leadership, etc. So today I'll talk about one of the most important aspects of leadership, which is creative leadership. You know, so we'll talk about three C's. There are many things that are happening. Creativity, being creative leader. It's not about creativity doesn't mean you're an artist or you're a singer or you're a dancer or anything of that sort. It means, can you think creatively? Can you think out of the box? So creative leadership, creative thinking is what we want to think about today. So there are three C's, okay, for creative leadership. One is there a clarity of purpose? Very, clear, and that purpose may change, but at any given point of time, is there a clarity of purpose that you can use as a yardstick to make every decision? So, is there a clarity of purpose? Second thing is about change. How do you react when there is change? And the third thing is complex situations. How do you react when there are complex situations? So I thought today I'll share some stories, incidents, about companies to talk about various aspects of creative leadership. The first one I talked about is clarity of purpose. Do you really believe in your vision? Do you really believe in what you're talking about? That no matter what the world says, you're very clear about it. I mean, today, if you ask any business student, any entrepreneur from anywhere in the world, one of the business leaders they admire the most, apart somebody who's not a movie star or a sports personality and still known just as much as many entertainers in this world probably is Steve Jobs. And many, from age 10 to 90, many people quote him as their idol. And I lived the Silicon Valley when I've seen the ups and downs of Steve Jobs, in terms of when Apple was funded, when it was doing very well, when it got fired out of Apple. He had to leave Apple. The Apple stock really fell, and people thought it would never come back. And they brought high-flying CEOs from other companies, and it felt like things were going really well, and they didn't. And then Steve Jobs went off, and he did. I still remember driving on Highway 101, seeing the next building. It was like a black cube. He built a company called Next, and then he came in, and then he built Pixar. Made it part of Disney, became part of Disney, and while all this was going on his other side of his life, he came back to Apple and completely reinvented Apple. And the thing that's amazing about Steve Jobs is that his clarity of purpose was never changed from the beginning. He decided that he was going to create a company that was going to be not just a technology leader, it is going to be beautifully designed. It is going to be aesthetically pleasing. The UI was going to be beautiful. He invested insane amounts of money in things that computing industry didn't think about. The computer purchasers didn't quite know that they wanted. So he was way ahead of his time in terms of thinking of a design and a consumer perspective. What would the consumer want, etc. So I wanted to stop and say hi to a lot of people who have joined. Thank you for joining. We have Kashmir, we have Swaraja, we have Srinidhi, we have Lari, we have Shivam, we have Srinivas. We have a lot of people who are here. So hello to all of you. So we are talking about Steve Jobs. And so he never left his belief. He never left that a beautifully designed machine is what the consumers would want. I remember when I was working at Intel, he would come to have lunches with our CEO, Andy Grove. They never agreed on anything. But he was clear that he wanted advice or he wanted to have conversations. So the purpose of Apple was much higher than his own personal journey or his own personal, interest. He didn't care if people liked him or not. A lot of people who worked with him said he was like a really, really tough guy to work for. His focus was on the product and the company. In achieving that, if you were not with him, too bad. So very, very clear in what he wanted. So I just wanted to read my favorite Apple ad. At ink on one of the walls, we have written this whole, around the room, we have written this. And this is a thing of, here is to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in square holes, the one who see things differently. They are not fond of rules. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify them, or vilify them, but the only thing you can't do is ignore them because they change things. They push the human race forward. And while some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius. Because the ones who are crazy enough to think that they can change the ones are the ones who do. And the fascinating story about this is that, they have recorded this ad in both Steve Jobs' voice as well as Richard Dreyfuss's voice, the actor Richard Dreyfuss's voice. And they couldn't figure out what they should use. And the advertising agency was very clear that it should be Steve's voice that should be recorded. And Steve couldn't make up his mind. And finally, on the morning it was supposed to air, or the midnight before, or something of that sort, he called them and said it should not be his voice, but the voice of Richard Dreyfuss. And this went on to become one of the most iconic ads. And he said that he did not want Apple to be associated with his persona. It has to be associated with the message. That's clarity of purpose. The purpose is Apple. The purpose is the computer. The purpose is what it stands for, to think different. It's not think differently, it's think different. So that's the power of clarity of thought. So as I said, to be a great creative leader, there's to be a clarity of purpose, and whether the world believes or not, you're following that path. The second thing is about change. It's not about the changes that are happening out there. It's about changing yourself. How do you keep up? How do you make sure that you are keeping up with what's happening? So let me tell you, when I lived in the Bay Area in the late 90s, early 2000s, one of the favorite things for us on a Friday was to go to the Blockbuster store. And this is where there were DVDs and videos and stuff you could rent, so you can watch it over the weekend and then return them. And countless number of times I kept them more than the 3 days. I had to pay extra and all that stuff. But there wasn't any choice, so we rented this. But it was like a fun thing to do, to go to the store, look at all the things, pick it up, take it home, and watch it. In front of my own eyes, I remember when Netflix started in 97, there'd be like this red envelope in which the DVDs would come home. So you signed up with the service and they rented 3 DVDs at home. You watched them and then you put it in a mail thing and put it in the mailbox and they took it away. They made it extremely easy to receive and send it back. So Netflix became really popular, and actually they started in 97, and Blockbuster was in 2004. I mean, Blockbuster was such a big company. In 2004, there are almost 10,000 stores and about 85,000 people working for them in many countries. That's how big Blockbuster was. And Netflix started in 2002. They went public, but before going public in 2000, they went to Blockbuster and offered to sell themselves for $50 million, and Blockbuster laughed them out of the room. And I mean, these are the stories. So maybe I'm off by a million or two, but these are the stories. And today, Netflix has over 150 million paid subscribers in over 190 countries. It's huge. It's a huge company. Now, how did they change themselves from this company that was willing to sell for $50 million to Blockbuster, being laughed out of the room, decided to go IPO, and then grow by leaps and bounds? So first, they used to send the DVDs. Then they saw that these were going to become obsolete when content started streaming, when the big pipes, data pipes started coming home in America, that people had bandwidth, but they weren't really watching anything interesting at home. There wasn't interesting content. So Netflix started streaming content, which means that they had to invent new ways of negotiating with entertainment companies about how they get the rights of the movies. It's not just you get a certain number, you bought certain number of DVDs and circulating them. You're streaming content now. So they figured out all the technology, how you're going to get it streamed to your house in a way that it is as fast as possible. And then they got into producing original content, and not just streaming somebody else's content, but creating their own content. And I remember when House of Cards first came, and they did something absolutely brilliant. The way the television was watched is you waited for an episode. So every Thursday night, you watch Grey's Anatomy or something like that. And then you have to wait for one more week to what happened. And you are like, the show ends and you want to know what happened. And I remember when they came up with House of Cards, the entire 13 episodes or 12 episodes, I can't remember, they were released at the same time. The whole idea of binge watching started with that. So when 13 episodes came, people stayed up and watched all 13 episodes because you want to know what happens next, and it was available for you. So they completely changed the viewing pattern. So not only have they changed themselves, they also have changed the industry. They've changed the audience. They changed the viewing patterns. They changed, the best things being made for movie versus best things being made for your phone. Something that you have in your hand, something on your laptop. So they've constantly changed themselves from a video rental. I mean, Blockbuster remained a video rental store, and they went out the minute DVDs went out. Whereas Netflix they're foreseeing the changes that are coming and reinvented themselves from a DVD rental to a streaming to an original content. And today, a company that started in 1997, many, many decades after a company like Disney, which is known for content, today they are neck to neck race, Disney and Netflix. That's how much of an original content player they are. So, and they've really brought a certain quality of content for the small screen, which is very, very interesting. So Indrani is saying, yeah, experience is growing exponentially. Absolutely, you're right. So we talked about clarity of purpose. We talked about change, how you need to change yourself in creative leadership. And there's one more thing, which is complexity. We operate in a very complex environment where some businesses will shut down, some of our businesses will stay afloat. So as a leader, you have to constantly think about which aspect of my business is most needed today and what do I need to do. And it is not just about building one product company. It's about creating an ecosystem that takes that product and makes it really meaningful out there, So the first thing, so I want to give you an example of Western Union. Okay, so Western Union started in 1851. Okay, and when it started, it was not a financial services company. It was telegram company. They sent telegrams, and sorry, before I move on to, I just want to see the comment from Indrani. It says HBO is also trying to stream its own channel. How do you think the channel network viewing will change? Dynamic viewer change with Apple OTT. See, the thing is, today it's not a world where one person talks and everybody listens. There are many people talking, many different people will go to different platforms. And just because you're popular in one doesn't guarantee your success in the other. For example, Apple, iPhone, computer are all popular. Will they be larger than Netflix someday? It's not to be taken for granted. They have to work at it as though they are a startup, where Netflix has so much, is ahead of them. So nothing is taken for granted today. Just because you're big in one doesn't mean you can become equally big in the other. So you have to work at it. So I want to talk about the Western Union example. Now we come to the complexity piece of it. Western Union is a company that was started in 1851, as I was talking about. And they were, as I said, they would send telegrams, etc. In 1871, they started the money transfer business, but that wasn't there. They were not known for it. Western Union telegrams were really, really, really well known. So what they did was always, they didn't anticipate way back when that telegram was going to disappear, but they made sure that they kept up with technology. They were technology innovators in everything that they did. And they also did something very, very interesting. They didn't look at themselves as just a money transferring mechanism. They looked at themselves as people solving somebody's problem. They looked at, there are people all over the world who need money, and how do we make their problems with money go away? So it was not just like, okay, I have an office, if you need to send money, come to it. They thought about people who did not have access to banks. They thought about people who may speak in only their local language. They thought about emergency response. When there's a flood, when there is something, how do you get money into it? They have served over 137 countries and helped millions of people for emergency response. Okay, and they gave scholarships to students. They transferred money for students to be able to go to college. They have like over 173 students in 64 countries to whom they give scholarships. So they see themselves in the business of giving you money when you're in need, and not just about a money transfer mechanism. So when the telegram business stopped, when it shut down, can you imagine? I remember when I was growing up, of course, getting a telegram was like the worst thing. You were like terrified when there was a telegram to the house. Maybe it was telling about somebody's death or something of that sort. And I think the last telegram was sent in 2006 or something like that, quite a while ago. So my son, who is 16 now, doesn't even know what a telegram means. And I remember when we got married in 95, we got a lot of telegrams, like those pink paper with like white strips saying congratulations and things like that. So something like a telegram, which was part and parcel of our lives, has just shut its doors. But Western Union survived because they're a very, very creative leadership. To be honest, in a creative leadership, you may not even know the name of the leader. We know Steve Jobs did Apple. And maybe few of you, not many of you, may know that Reed Hastings is the CEO of Netflix. But even I don't know who was the CEO of Western Union that saw the change, that was really instrumental in Western Union being a force in the money transfer business. I don't know who it is. And I think the numbers are, you need to look it up, but it's almost like they transfer almost $80 billion every day or something like that, some huge number every day. It goes from one person to the other. Now just imagine being able to be in that position where you could have been a company like an Eastman Kodak or someone, or a Lehman Brothers, to be doyen for over a century and shut your doors. It could happen. But the reason it didn't happen to them is that they never took their success for granted. They always made sure that, they helped everybody else. There was a whole ecosystem built. So again, as I said, they helped people who didn't have access to banks. They helped people who needed emergency response, etc. So if I need to summarize, we have been in an industrial revolution for the last 200 years, okay? Which means we did manufacturing, we did cars, and we did motorbikes, we did this, we did, microprocessors, we did chips, we did microwaves. It was predominantly a manufacturing industry, and we had to produce millions of those at low rates. And they were copy exactly. They looked identical to each other. So there was a division of labor and education, and everything was about following rules. This is what you need to do. And there was a way by which, if you did what you were supposed to do, there was some success that was guaranteed. And the situations around you didn't change drastically fast. Now, today we are living in a creative economy. This is not from industrial economy. We became a knowledge economy with Y2K and all that stuff. We did knowledge economy. And now we are in a creative economy, because the threat to the most established business can come from two kids who may be in kindergarten today, and 10 years from now, they may have done something in their garage that may shut this company down. It could happen. So we cannot take our success for granted, or the fact that we are going to stay afloat for granted at all. So in a creative leadership, to summarize today's conversation, first of all, we are in the era of creative leadership. There is just no doubt about it. If you're still stuck in the Industrial Revolution, if you still say that it's all about tops-down management, etc., it's just a matter of time before somebody will take us over. So in this era of creative leadership, we just have to make sure we are flexible. And the three things I talked about are there is a clarity of purpose, like in Steve Jobs' case. There's a change. You need to change who you are constantly, and you need to respond to a very complex world, and you need to build an ecosystem like Western Union did to be able to stay afloat. So that's a summary of the creative leadership. So I always have to tell a story to end what we're doing. So let me tell you a story. See, they say that creativity is not about finding unusual answers. It's about asking different questions. So I'll give you a story of there is a teacher, and there is all these people with problems come to him, and they're the same problem every day. They're coming and saying, how do I increase the share of my company? How do I increase the profitability of my product? Whatever it is, it's the same question they are asking every day. Okay. So one day the teacher says, okay, enough of this. Let me tell you a joke. He tells a joke. It's very, very funny. They all laugh and they go. Next day they come back. Teacher tells the same joke. Now they're laughing a little bit because it is kind of a funny joke, you know. In the third day they come, tells the same joke. Now they're like not laughing that much. Fourth, fifth day, finally somebody says, teacher, you're telling the same joke over and over again. It's not funny anymore. So the teacher turns around and says, you're asking the same question, same problem every day. So it doesn't make sense anymore. So the point is, if things are not working, change the question. It's not about seeking answers, but questioning yourself if you're asking the right question. So each of the companies I talked about, be it Apple or Netflix or Western Union, they ask the right question. So as a company, they changed a lot, but they kept asking the right questions. So with that story, I take your leave, and every Tuesday I look forward to continuing the conversations about leadership and see how we can all, flex our leadership muscle and learn how to be great leaders. Thank you very much. Bye bye.